Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to be going over our questionnaire. This is the form we send out with the tax packet to help us understand the last year and changes that might have happened. I'm Jeff, and this is Lindsay here joining me.
Hello.
I'm the corporate manager, and Lindsay is a partner in CPA. So I'll be asking the questions, and Lindsay will give us a little insight on what we're looking for. Reason being is that some of these questions are a little bit confusing or can be confusing. We try and take the tax lingo out of it, but we do understand some of them are confusing. So this will hopefully help address anything that might give you trouble. So we will jump right into the questionnaire here. On the left, you will notice there is a yes and no column with boxes below it next to each question. It's pretty straightforward. If you could just please check the yes if it does apply to you, no if it does not. We have got some questions if it's more of a NA situation, what to do. We would prefer you check the no box to let us know that you have acknowledged the question and it does not apply to you, best that you can tell. So the first section is personal information. This is pretty straightforward. The big ones are any change to marital status or change to your address. This is just to make sure that we have everything current for your tax return. And the last question is about the identity protection PIN from the IRS. Lindsay, can you tell us a little bit more about that question?
Yes, so unfortunately, this is a more common issue recently. If you have been a victim of tax return identity theft, the IRS will have issued you an IP PIN. It comes in a paper notice, and we do need that to file your tax return. So if you could submit that with your documentation, that would be great.
That makes sense. So would that be the same as if my identity was stolen in regards to like a credit card or debit card? Will I be issued a PIN from the
No,
IRS?
this is different than another type of identity theft. So this is specifically in relation to tax return identity theft, and you will get something from the IRS.
Got it. And the next section is in regards to dependents. You will notice there's an option if skip if no dependents. So if you no longer have dependents or this does not apply to you, you can just check the no's and skip to the next section. The first one is just were there any changes in dependents? This is pretty straightforward. Generally, that would be the birth of a child or a child no longer living with you. The next three we'll kind of lump together here. They're talking more about situations where a dependent might live in multiple homes or things like that. So, Lindsay, you wanna talk a little bit more about these questions for us?
Yeah, so we are required to ask and to know what the situation is for children that you do claim as dependents. So these questions achieve that. If you are single, divorced, or legally separated, you may be eligible for head of household status. So that question is in reference to that. The same with whether or not the children live with you for over half of the year. The third one about child tax credits and head of household, you do have to have documentation to support the claim that you are um, providing the support for more than half of the year for these people. So we do ask that you initial here in order for us to answer the questions properly on the tax return and get you those credits in that favorable status.
And so, moving on to the next ones, these are questions about credits that were disallowed or reduced in the previous year. So there's a few listed here. You'll notice the child tax credit, earned income credit, other dependent credit, or American Opportunity Credit. And we ask you to please circle those that do apply. Lindsay, you want to explain what those credits are about?
Well,
What
this
that question?
section, if you did get a notice from the IRS that disallowed certain credits, we would need to know that for future year returns. If that doesn't apply, then you can just select no.
Got it. And the next two questions are about dependents and earned income and how that might apply to the tax return. So, what are we looking for here in these questions?
Yeah, we want to know if the dependent that you're claiming did earn income, if they filed a tax return, if they did file a tax return, whether or not they claimed themselves on that tax return. And if the child had investment income, it could have potential impacts on your own tax return depending on your income levels. So we need to know that information as well.
And then the last one, which is another common one we see or questions about, is dependent care expenses. not paid by using a flexible spending account. So you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this is your typical daycare cost. If you don't have a flex spending account, you may be eligible for dependent care credit on your tax return, but we do need the supporting documentation from the provider, which includes the EIN and their address.
Okay, and then moving on to the next section, which is income. The first question just touches on if you received federal or state unemployment. We do anticipate we'll see more of that this year. You will receive the documentation from either the federal or state agencies, and of course, just please provide that with the rest of your documents. Uh, Next one is about receiving, selling, sending, or exchanging virtual currency. The big one that is Bitcoin that most people know about. So this is gaining a bit of popularity. Lindsay, you want to let us know a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so in this area, we actually need to know when you sold, exchanged, bought. Any transaction is reportable, and you do not receive a tax form for this. So you have to provide records. A lot of times it's an Excel spreadsheet of your transactions for the year, but we do need all of that data for your tax return.
And the next question is about, did you have any foreign income or pay foreign income taxes other than through a brokerage account? We do commonly have people who see foreign taxes paid through their brokerage account, and this is the opposite of that. So what are we looking for here in that question?
Yeah, so if you are living in another country and you're paying foreign taxes, we want to know about that. If you pay foreign property tax, you have an investment in a foreign country, we want to know about that. So this is a different type of thing than the foreign tax withheld or paid on your brokerage account.
And the last two questions are also about foreign interests or interest in foreign accounts. What are these two questions looking for?
Yeah, so recently there's been new requirements to report an interest in a foreign bank account or foreign investment account. And that's what these questions are asking. Do you have an interest in or signature authority over? Maybe mom has an interest in it and you can sign on mom's account. You would need to check yes to this question so that we can report that correctly on your tax return. There is a question on the return that asks this. And if you did have an interest in a foreign account or more than one type of interest, if the total of all of that at any point in the year was more than $10,000, there is some additional reporting that we have to do, and we can help you determine what you need to provide to us in order to do so.
Moving on to the next section, which is purchases, sales, and debt. First two questions are about business related items. Lindsay, you want to tell them a little bit more about what we're looking for in these questions?
Yeah, first we want to know if you did start a business. There are startup expenses that may be deductible on your tax return, or if you acquired an interest in a new partnership or S corp or a trust. Those are all things that will have an impact on the reporting. So please include documentation there. The second one question here is about business assets. So if you bought new furniture, equipment, a laptop, a piece of machinery, we will need to depreciate those or talk about depreciation. So we'll need to know the cost, the description of the item. If you sold something or you retired it from use, your printer was no longer working, we do need to know that. So if you review your assets and let us know any changes, that would be great.
Right. Next one is about debt cancellation. So if you had debts canceled, forgiven, or reduced, this is important because it actually can be considered income on your taxes. So again, we're happy to jump into that more with you, but you'll want to note yes if that did happen. Similar with another common one we see is buy or sell any stocks, bonds, or investment properties. So again, you generally will get the 1099-B for this when it comes to stocks and bonds, and we'll want to see that documentation with your return as well. So check that yes. Moving on to the next one about the purchase or sell, refinance a principal residence or a second home. We do anticipate seeing a lot of refinances based on the situation in 2020. We just know a lot of our clients have already done that. So it is important for us to see that the final statements or final settlement statements. There are some deductions on there that people don't often know about. So you want to include that in as well. And then the last two are about a home equity line of credit and then also the residential energy efficient improvements. Have anything to add for those?
Yeah, so with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, the home equity loan interest used to be deductible, and now the loan proceeds must have been used on improvements on the property. So we do need to know what the equity line was used for, and you may have to separate out those costs so we can calculate the deductible interest portion there. And the last one, residential energy efficient improvements. There are potential federal and state tax credits that may be available, and we need a lot of documentation for that. So if you can start by listing the types of improvements you had, we can often follow up with additional questions as to what we need in order to take some of those credits.
Okay, moving on to the next section, which is retirement and benefits. First question, again, another pretty straightforward one. Did you receive a distribution from a retirement plan? This would be like a 401k or IRA. You will receive a 1099-R for that. And again, you'll just check that yes and put that documentation in with the rest of your stuff. The next three are about contributions to retirement accounts. What are we looking for in these sections?
Yeah, so a lot of these we can see on your W-2 if you are an employee. If you're self-employed, you may contribute to an IRA, and we need to know if you've already made your IRA contribution for this year and what type of contribution it is, a Roth or a traditional, so that we can make sure you're eligible and that it's correctly reported on your tax return. And then the last one is about a conversion. So did you convert a SEP or simple to a Roth IRA? There is special reporting on the return for that as well. So please include documentation related to that.
Okay, and then next two questions are about health savings accounts or medical savings accounts, so HSA or MSA. What do we need to know about these ones?
We need to know if you had one and if you made contributions or distributions from either. You'll get tax forms related to that as well, so please include those. And then if you did have HSA distributions, they had to have been used for qualified medical expenses in order for those distributions to be non-taxable. So please check yes if you did use your distributions for qualified medical expenses.
And then you will see we just have a one question here about healthcare coverage. It's did you receive IRS documentation form 1095A? So only a 1095A. Lindsay, what's the difference there with the 1095A?
The 1095A is in relation to the premium tax credit. So this is entirely different than a 1095B, which just shows that you had health insurance. And a lot of people get those. That was part of the requirement under the Affordable Care Act that actually no longer applied. So you may or may not get a 1095B or C. But really what we need is the copy of a 1095A if you receive that, as that has tax implications on your tax return.
On to higher education. The first question is going to be about if you or your spouse paid interest on higher education loans. So this is just your standard payments. If you have student loans, you do get a form for that, the 1098E. And again, you want to include that with the rest of your documentation. The next two questions are about paying for higher education and what do we need to know here?
Yeah, so the first one is in relation to education credits that you may be eligible for. And we have to have the 1098T in order to determine your eligibility for that. This often requires your student logging into their online account and pulling it directly for you. It's not something that may be mailed directly to you. It may be mailed to your student instead, and they have to give you a separate copy. And the second one is about distributions from an education savings account. A common one is a 529 plan. If you did have those kinds of distributions, we need to know all of your expenses, not just those on a 1098T, which shows tuition and some fees. Room and board would apply here. Supplies like computers, pencils, things like that would also apply here.
Okay, and then the last one is about a series EEUS savings bond issued after 1989.
Yeah, so with this, if you have one of these and you used the money to pay for higher education for yourself, spouse, or dependent, the earnings could be non-taxable. So we do need to have details regarding that. Include that in your tax materials.
On to deductions, where we see the most questions when it comes to taxes. The first one is about if you were in a federally declared disaster area, and unfortunately we did see that up and down the West Coast during 2020, and it would not just be in the area but also incurred a large loss, so that'd be more than 10% of your income. You'll want to let us know that happened. Moving on to the next question about charitable contributions. Lindsay, what do they need to know about that and documentation?
Yeah, we do need documentation. So a lot of times people will just give us a list, but if you had a contribution over $250, a cash contribution, we want the receipt so that we can verify that it says no goods or services was received. That's very important. If it doesn't say that, it's not an eligible contribution. We also need all non-cash donation receipts. We have to report information about those non-cash donations, and we need the dates, the items donated. So if you can provide all of those receipts, it's very helpful. And the next question is about qualified charitable distributions. If you have one of these, you generally know about it. We do need details. So this is when a distribution is made directly from your IRA to a charity. It doesn't go to you and you write the check. It goes directly to the charity. We need that information.
And lastly, what about if you're a teacher, counselor, or principal in a K through 12 school?
Yeah, you are eligible for up to $250 per person, meaning taxpayer and spouse, of unreimbursed expenses. Books, supplies. This can also be professional development, classroom materials. So if you did have those out of pocket expenses, please let us know the amount so we can add that to your return.
Tax payments and refunds. Here, the first question is about if you made any federal or state estimated tax payments during 2020. If you did, of course, we're going to need to know the dates and amounts, and it is helpful if we can have that separated between the federal and state payments. And then with that, if you did have an overpayment in 2020, you do have the option of applying that excess to your 2021 tax payment, or you can, of course, receive a refund. So this just lets us know what you would prefer for your 2020 return. What are we looking at here, Lindsay, with the changes in income or withholdings?
Yeah, so a lot of people will think about last tax year and this tax year, but we actually want to know about this tax year and then the present year that we're in. So 2021, do you think 2021 income or withholding are going to be different? Do you expect to retire later this year? Do you expect to get a new job? Do you expect to go part-time? We want to know what exchanges or changes you're expecting in the future. So please detail those here.
Okay. And then if you do get that refund that everybody wants to see, you have the option of receiving that in through check or deposited electronically straight from the IRS. So if you do that, we just need to make sure we have the correct bank account information, and if it's changed from the years previous. You also have the option of making payments electronically. So again, it'll be taken out directly from your bank account. And we do like to know what day you'd like to make that payment. So if that occurs, we can make sure it happens on the day you'd like. On to miscellaneous, which covers a wide range of tax topics. The first one is just a straightforward question about if the taxpayer or spouse want to allocate $3 of the tax return to the presidential election campaign. So it's a simple yes, no, and we will get that on the tax return. And then about IRS or state tax agencies having discussions with us. So, Lindsay, what are we going over here?
Yeah, that next question is just authorizing us to respond to the IRS if they reach out to us about your return. Now, most kinds of communication like this would require power of attorney. So this is very, very general questions. If you want us to respond on your behalf, you can answer yes here.
Right. And was your home rented out or used for business? I read that question out because we do anticipate a lot of people worked from home in 2020. And this is slightly different question from that. So, Lindsay, you want to explain a little bit more about the difference between this
Yeah.
question and working from home?
Unfortunately, this is not for employees who had to work from home during 2020. This is if you're self employed. Did you work out of your home, or did you rent a space in your home, a room to a roommate? Those are two different tax reporting items that we need to look at more closely, but it's not for the employee working from home. And then the next question about alimony, the rules around alimony changed about 2 years ago, and we do need to know the date of divorce. So if you made or received alimony payments, please include the divorce date here as well.
Now on to question about mileage and documentation for mileage. There's actually a few questions here about rentals and business expenses and documentation, but the first one here is touching on just if you had any expenses for or vehicle related expenses. Is generally mileage. We do just need that recorded and included with everything else. And then a few questions here about 1099s. What do they need to know about that?
Yeah, so if you have a business, you may be required to issue 1099s, and this is required when you pay someone over $600 for services during the year. If you need help determining whether you need to file 1099s, please reach out to us. And then the second question is whether or not you did file the 1099s. There's actually a question on the tax return that asks this, so we have to have an answer here as to whether or not you filed your 1099s.
And what about this 250 service hours in regards to rentals?
Yeah, so with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, there was a new qualified business income deduction that was introduced for businesses, and it also applies to rentals. And so if you and anyone else spent over 250 hours servicing your rental property, you may be eligible for this deduction. So that could include time that your management company spent on it, that landscapers spent on it, that repair people spent on it. If it was over 250 hours for the year, then you could be eligible, and we need a log of those hours.
All right, and then we have a question about if you had a household employee like maid or nanny. When do we think we need to know about that?
Yeah, so this is in relation to a household employee that is your employee. It's not a maid service. It's not a company that you hire to come in and do something for you. If this person works solely for you, they may be a household employee, and you may be responsible for paying some of their taxes. And so the thresholds here, $2,200 annually or more than $1,000 in a quarter. If you think that this may apply to you, mark yes, and we will reach out with additional questions.
Right. And of course, if you did receive anything from the IRS or from the state taxing agency, please do just go ahead and include that. It may or may not impact your tax return, but it is always nice for us to have that information. We do get a lot of questions about gifting. So, what do we need to know here about this question in $15,000?
In general, if you gifted more than $15,000 to another person or to a trust, we do want to know about it. It's possible a gift tax return may need to be filed. And so, if that's the case, please answer yes, and we'll follow up with additional questions.
Next up, we have the Coronavirus Aid and CARES Act. A few questions about that. The first one being, did you receive the stimulus payment? If you did, we do need to know the amount so we can reconcile that on your 2020 tax return. There's a few more aid options here that people may have received. Lindsay, what are we looking for on these ones?
Thanks. Two of these are related to businesses. So the first one is about PPP loans, EIDL loans, or grants, SBA loans. If you applied for and received any of these types of aid, please provide information for us. Same goes for forgiveness. If you applied for or expect to apply for forgiveness for the PPP loan, please let us know. We do need as much information here as you can share so we can make sure things are appropriately accounted for on your tax return. And the next one is about payroll taxes. If you did defer payroll taxes or received payroll tax credits, please let us know. We'll be able to see some of it on quarterly payroll tax reports, but we would like any additional information you can share so we can review carefully. And the last one is about distributions from retirement plans. The rules regarding distributions changed quite a bit because of COVID. So if you did take a distribution as a result of COVID-19, please share with us the circumstances surrounding that so we can make sure things are reported correctly on your return.
And the last section is the Oregon specific section. So if you are not an Oregon resident and have no Oregon source income, you are done and you can go ahead and skip this part. The first question is about if you or your spouse want to contribute $3 to the political party. So again, you just put a yes, and then please do list the party so we know which one to apply it to. Along those lines, if you made any political contributions up to $100, we do need to see the receipt for that. So please let us know the amount and include the receipt. And then what about this Oregon Revenue Online?
This is a really neat tool. It allows us, if you give us authorization, to log into your Oregon online account and see your tax payments. That's all we can see is just when you made your tax payments, but we can verify those and we can see if there were penalties and interest on those and account for that on your tax return. So if you do authorize us, it helps us a lot to verify your information and have less back and forth with questions for you. And then the next one is about the Oregon College Savings Plan, which provides for a credit in the 2020 tax return. This used to be a subtraction and it turned into a credit in 2020. So if you did make contributions to a Oregon 529 plan, please include your account statement that shows the 2020 contributions. And next is a question about medical expenses. Oregon also has a subtraction for medical expenses. We do need to know the total amount of medical expenses that was for yourself and your spouse separately. So if you can separate those out and provide the totals here, that will help us report it correctly on your tax return.
Right. And what is this one about the military or U.S. civil service pension? And you want to know, it looks like you want the year as well.
Yeah, so it's possible that you may get a reduction of taxable income on your Oregon return due to a U.S. pension as well, and we need the year retired in order to calculate that.
Got it. And next we got more about some contributions. What do we need to know specifically about the Oregon Cultural Trust?
So Oregon provides a tax credit for donations made to the Oregon Cultural Trust. If there are matching donations made to various organizations, there's a specific list, you will get an Oregon tax credit for that donation. So if you did engage in that, please provide those details and documentation.
Okay, and then there's a piece that they can donate part of theirs. Is that right?
Yeah, you can donate part of your refund, your Oregon refund, to a charity. So if you'd like to do that, please provide the amount here and let us know the charity. We can't complete this if we don't know which charity you want it to go to.
Right, and then we have a question here about for Portland residents specific. They are required to do the Portland Arts tax return. So let us know if you've done that. Within our tax software, we are able to do it for you if you'd prefer, or if you have not done it yet. So again, yes, if you have, and then let us know if you'd like to. And then again, we have finish it up with the Portland, Multnomah County, Tri-Med area specific question here.
So this is for businesses. If you generated revenue in one of these jurisdictions or multiple jurisdictions here, Portland, Multnomah County, Tri-Med, we do have to report that. They each have their own tax return, and we have to report the income generated in each of those separately. So we'll need a breakout of that from you so we can do so.
Okay, and then lastly, there is just this section here. If you'd like to, or if you have any questions, comments, please do include them here. We'll definitely take a look at those. And we hope that this video was helpful for you and answer some of the questions you might have as you go through the information. We are happy to help you. If you'd like to reach out to us directly by calling us or emailing us, you can email the CPA, or you can always email info@bisic.com. Thanks so much.